Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This video you're about to watch, along with all the ones to follow, will be focused on explaining how various TV shows, games, movies, and books exemplify different aspects of storytelling and how we can incorporate the lessons these IPs teach into our own personal works. Now, while I could go on explaining the format of these videos, I think it would be more instructive to show you what this channel is about throughout this video instead of telling you what it's about in this introduction. With that said, let's dive right in. In my previous video, I went over how Avatar: The Last Airbender introduces its world through effective world building. And today we will be discussing how Code Geass introduces its main protagonist, Lelouch v. Britannia. Back when I was planning out my first series of videos for this channel, there were a few that got me actively excited to pursue this path, and this is one of those videos. Why? Well, for one, I love Code Geass, especially the first season and that moment, and I don't see it talked about nearly enough here on YouTube. The other main reason is that Lelouch is a perfect character to examine in a video like this, and I feel there's quite a lot we can learn from studying how the show handles his introduction. Now, for some clarity, I will only be talking about Lelouch's involvement in the first 2 episodes of the anime, since they tell the same part of the story, and maybe Zero's introduction, but we'll see how the length goes. I know that technically the first main conflict of the story ends in episode 3, but by then the world begins to expand beyond just Lelouch, and I just released a video on world building, so including episode 3 in this video seems a bit unnecessary. Besides, we learned quite a bit about Lelouch in the first 2 episodes, so I don't think we'll be found wanting for content in this video. Okay, enough of this preamble, let's get into how Code Geass excels at introducing its main character, Lelouch v. Britannia. Our initial introduction to Lelouch happens in the first scene of episode 1. It starts with a small man wearing formal attire playing a game of chess against a nervous older man wearing less fancy clothes. The demeanor of the 2 men, along with the brief interaction we see between them, tells us that the older man is losing. Then, the door to the room opens and we see Lelouch's silhouette appear in the white light. From there, Lelouch approaches the game and takes over for the older man, who is noticeably relieved to see him. In the dubbed version of the episode, the man literally says that he is saved now that Lelouch has arrived, which is our first indication of Lelouch's savior complex. Immediately after that, his friend looks at the board and questions Lelouch's decision to play, giving Black's lost position. Him saying that it's impossible for Lelouch to win, in conjunction with Lelouch's unwavering confidence, shows us his internal belief in himself regardless of however the odds may be stacked against him. Now let's take a moment to discuss Lelouch's appearance. His height, build, hair, and face tell us that he's a young man but not a kid, so a teenager. His clothes are formal and high quality, but the fact that the other teenager is wearing the same outfit tells us it's a uniform, and given their age, we can assume it's a school uniform. This is confirmed to us when Lelouch asks his friend how long it'll take for them to get back to class. At first, the eldest student is worried about being late, which prompts the question, and Lelouch's demeanor throughout the entire exchange remains calm and confident. Once Lelouch sits down, he decides that his first move is to move his king, which confuses everyone in the room and makes his opponent brash and arrogant. However, Lelouch's confidence remains resolute, and we find out a short time later that Lelouch won the game. Okay, so let's take a moment to note what we've learned about Lelouch within 1 minute of meeting him. 1. He is a teenager who attends some high school somewhere. 2. He has enough connections to know about the suspicious-looking game of chess. 3. He has the confidence to walk into this room to relieve the older man before ever knowing how bad his position on the board might be. 4. Seeing the stated impossible position on the board does not affect his mindset at all. 5. The limited amount of time he has to win the game and return to school does not bother him. 6. He has somewhat of a savior complex. 7. He enjoys competing against someone who believes they hold an advantage over him. And 8. He either has a willingness to take chances others find foolish, or sees opportunities and angles others miss. Now, my hope is that you can understand why I chose Lelouch as a subject for this video on how to introduce your main character, after seeing how Code Geass teaches us so much about him in a single scene. But it does not stop there. Virtually every scene with Lelouch in the first 2 episodes teaches us something more about him. While Code Geass is not the only show to do this, it is still a valuable example to study. The next time you see Lelouch is when he and his classmates are returning to school. His friend is shocked that he won, while he basically dismisses the game and calls nobles overprivileged parasites. This statement, in conjunction with his enjoyment of seeing his opponent feeling superior to him, shows us that Lelouch takes a deep-rooted satisfaction in humbling people with status and rank. When we learn the truth about his childhood in a future episode, it takes this quippy one-liner and turns it into part of the foundation of his personality and desires, which is exactly the kind of thing any writer should aim to do when introducing their main characters. All of this is given another subtle layer when we see his reaction to the Viceroy's proclamation. Then all of this is made even more significant when we learn the truth about the two of them in episode 2, but I'll talk more about that later. For now, I want to talk about the next scene with Lelouch. His friend asks why he moved the king first, to which he says, "If the king does not lead, how can he expect his subordinates to follow?" This moment is great because it is an example of showing, not telling, as we saw him move the piece before we learned why he did it, and the why harkens to the cornerstone of his character. Lelouch holds a personal grudge against the royal family of the Britannian Empire, and as we see in episode 2, he has no qualms about taking control of his situation and leading others when such opportunities arrive. There are also plenty of times later on in the series where Lelouch exposes himself to significant risk so that those that follow him can carry out his orders. All in all, my point here is that when you are introducing your characters, try to find ways to show your audience what they are about and have what they say allude to some underlying aspect of their personality. Learning how to do so effectively will make your characters intriguing and relatable at the same time, which increases the chances of your audiences investing in them. Continuing on with this scene, Lelouch and his friend are indirectly involved in an accident when a truck occupied by the resistance almost runs into them and crashes into a nearby building. When the students pull over to observe what happened, Lelouch sees something strange. Then, when he notices that no one is heading to help the people in the crash, he runs towards the scene himself. This moment serves three purposes. First, it is his initial interaction with the resistance, and more importantly, Callan. Second, it is his, and our, first interaction with CC, and the supernatural part of the show. Third, it shows us another layer to his personality. So far, we have only seen Lelouch being confident, borderline arrogant, and somewhat snide. But here, we see that he, at least when the story started, has a more human side that cares about people. I know that he sees the CC energy thing before he decides to run towards the truck, but it's not until he hears someone say that someone should go help and he calls them idiots that he decides to approach the truck. Also, when he arrives, the first thing he does is try to check on the drivers, not get into the back of the truck. So to me, it's pretty obvious that his motivation here was to help and not to figure out the source of that weird energy. The next piece of information we learn about Lelouch comes to us after he falls into the truck. In this scenario, he does not scream or panic, and in fact we see him calculating his potential moves when Callan goes to enter her nightmare. So, what this shows us is that the cool, calm, and collected demeanor Lelouch displayed during the chess game translates to stressful situations that transpire in his actual life. Now, keep in mind that everything I've talked about so far takes place in the first 10 to 11 minutes of the first episode, and compare that to how much your audience learns about your main character in your opening chapters. I'm not saying that you should rush your pacing or anything like that, but instead try to structure the first several encounters we have with your main character in a way that teaches us as much about them as possible. And to further elaborate on that point a bit, Code Geass teaches us about Lelouch's character by showing us how he responds to various situations instead of telling us how he would. I know I've harped quite a bit on this point in my last video, but one of the biggest issues I've personally encountered with works in progress I've read for is for inexperienced writers' tendency to tell instead of show. Alright, so with that tangent out of the way, let's move on to the next scene I wanted to talk about. A bit further ahead in the episode, we get the scenes with Lelouch, Suzaku, and Cici. This scene elaborates a little on the flashback we see at the very start of the episode and serves as a reunion between Lelouch and Suzaku. It's here that we get our first real, tangible taste of Lelouch's hatred for the Britannian Empire, even though he himself is Britannia. This is also the first time we see Lelouch uncertain and concerned about his situation, which adds another layer onto his personality. By comparing and contrasting the scene where Lelouch is watching Suzaku talk to his superiors with the chess game, we see that he is calculating in both, which adds consistency to his character. However, during the chess game, Lelouch felt like he was in control, whereas in the scene with Suzaku, he does not feel in control. So, ultimately what we learn is that his confidence is proportional to the level of control he can exert over a given situation. What this dynamic does, when intertwined with his intelligence, is organically create epic moments of genius when Lelouch is winning a given encounter, and dramatic underdog moments when he is losing. I bring this up because this demonstrates that Lelouch is not a flat, gimmicky, one-trick pony kind of character, but rather a layered, dynamic character. And it's the complexities in how he handles the wide variety of situations he finds himself in that makes both him and Code Geass so interesting. So, when you are working on your own main character, you can generate intrigue by showing how they react differently to different situations and have those reactions play off each other, like how I have explained how Code Geass does that with Lelouch. This point is further enforced in the next few scenes with Lelouch. They start with him running through the subway system as he's trying to escape the military. He's on the back foot here, so we do not see his confidence. However, he is planning all of his possible moves as he runs, so while at a disadvantage, we see that he isn't giving up. But then, while hiding from the military on the stairs, something he did not expect happens in the form of his cell phone ringing. This shows us that even as smart as he is, Lelouch is still capable of overlooking or forgetting about things, and that fact comes up again multiple times throughout the show. It's during those moments that Code Geass is at its most tense, because Lelouch being forced to improvise is the antithesis of him being in control. Now, a valid rebuttal to what I've said so far is that the first episode would have ended with Lelouch being shot dead in a warehouse if the whole CC thing didn't happen, so let's address that. I do agree with that sentiment, but I don't think that tells the whole story. See, in this moment Lelouch is, despite his intelligence, still just an ordinary high schooler. While he is confident in himself, he has no practical experience dealing with situations larger than himself to speak of, and so of course he is in over his head here and with no ordinary way out. However, the Geass who we see some CC in this moment is extraordinarily vital in virtually every major move Lelouch makes throughout the rest of the series, so I would argue that none of these moments could have happened without it. But, going back to the scene itself, CC throws herself in front of Lelouch and takes a bullet for him. After that, she offers him the Geass on the condition that he fulfills her wish. He accepts, and everything changes. The next scene we get is one of the best power introductions I've ever seen. It is simple, brief, brutal, and over the top. Upon receiving the Geass, Lelouch feels in control, and as such, his retreating body language is replaced in an instant with strong and firm body language. Everyone present can feel the change that just happened, and from there we get Lelouch's first epic moment of the series.
Die.
The final part of the first episode I want to talk about is the final seconds of the episode. Lelouch's facial expressions here perfectly summarize everything I have said about his character so far in this video. This shot starts with him expressing a mixture of shock and uncertainty, but quickly shifts to a devilish smile and tells you everything you need to know about what to expect from the series moving forward. Episode 2 starts with Lelouch figuring out the specifics of how his new powers work, which is great for us since we also have no idea at this point how they work either. This sequence compounds all of the elements we learn about Lelouch in episode 1 together and shows us how they work together in an organic. As far as what episode 2 teaches us about Lelouch, it's mainly that he has an ability to convince people to follow him, that he is able to apply his strategic intelligence to real-world battle scenarios, and that in this moment to him, the battle is as much about surviving as it is proving to himself that he can wage war against Britannia. After Lelouch secures a nightmare, he quickly pieces together the situation and realizes he needs the Resistance's help to make it out of the situation alive. A short time later, he tracks down Callan and ultimately ends up manipulating the situation so that the Resistance receives their own nightmares. It's at this point that things start to become real for Lelouch, as he is actively engaging with other people who might choose to just ignore him and do their own thing. He knows how much he needs to get them on his side, and after some discussion, he manages to win them over with a mixture of bravado and pragmatism. Something to note here is that Lelouch did not get their support for free. In some stories, Lelouch giving them the nightmares might have been enough to win them over, but this scenario in Code Geass is a bit more satisfying to watch because Lelouch had to work a little bit harder to get what he wanted. Most of the rest of the episode is Lelouch proving to us, the audience, the members of the Resistance, and himself that his tactical mind is capable of effectively managing a full-scale real-life battle. A small detail I really like here is how we see Lelouch sweating when he is talking to himself about how he knows he can succeed. This shows that even though he believes in himself, he's still nervous since this is his first time in this kind of situation, which makes him more relatable. The final thing we learn about Lelouch in episode 2 is that he is a member of the Britannian royal family. To me, this is great because it raises so many natural questions like, if he's royalty, then why does he hate his own country so much? Also, his brother states that he thought Lelouch was dead, which brings up the other questions like, what exactly happened to Lelouch that made him so angry and led members of his family to believe he was dead? This is the kind of intrigue that takes people from being interested in a story to making them hooked and needing to know what happens next. If I had to summarize what the first 2 episodes of Code Geass did so well in terms of introducing Lelouch in a single sentence, I would say this. Code Geass taught us what we needed to know about Lelouch by showing us his main strength, his intelligence, multiple parts of his personality, a taste of his inner darkness, and a special power that makes him different from everyone else in the show. I know all of that might sound like a lot to give your audience at the start of your story, and to be honest, it is. But people are complex and complicated, and as such, we relate to complex and complicated characters. I'm not saying that you need to write out a complete character analysis in your first chapter, but what I am saying is that your audience should have a firm understanding of who your main protagonist is by the time the inciting incident reaches its conclusion. In general, everything that happens before your inciting incident takes place is more or less stuff that should get your audience up to speed on your world and main characters, while the inciting incident itself marks the start of the actual story. For me personally, and many other people I've spoken to over the years, if I haven't formed some kind of connection with the main cast by the time the inciting incident is over, then I'm going to inevitably lose interest in this story. Don't let this happen to you, and do everything you can to make your audience invest in your main character by introducing their intricacies in a similar manner to how Code Geass introduces Lelouch v. Britannia. Well, I'd say that just about covers everything I wanted to say about how Code Geass handles introducing its main character, Lelouch v. Britannia. And with that, I think it's time to wrap things up. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, then I want to say thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed my content. If you did, then please consider leaving a like, a comment telling me what you thought of the video, and subscribing to my channel for more videos like this every 2 weeks. I also have a Twitter and a Discord server, so if you're a writer looking to network with other writers, or if you just enjoy my content, then feel free to give me a follow and join the server. Links for all my social media platforms will be in the description below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.